What's going on, goalies? Welcome to the first dedicated tips video of NHL 24. Seeing as it's already March, we figured that instead of going over the basics, that we just get right into the good stuff. And what better tips video to start with than one that I think all of us definitely could use a little help on? It's breakaways. To get some insight on this, I thought there was no better person to ask than our residential breakaway expert, the breakaway king, Save. Now, before we get started, the point of this video is to teach you guys that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to stopping breakaways. There are so many different techniques, so many different mentalities that you can have because all shooters are different and all goalies are different. So what may work for McSavid, what may work for me, may not work for you. So overall, the point of this video is to encourage you to start building your own breakaway strategy and see what works best. Tip number one is speed boost. To activate it, you press down the L3 and that'll give you a speed boost while in precision movement. This can be really helpful on breakaways as it lets you challenge a lot more aggressively because you have that speed to close the gap with the shooter as well as to move back quicker in order not to get beat. Most people, myself included, have remapped speed boost to another button. For me, I use right bumper or R1 on the PlayStation controller just because I feel like this gives me better control over my left stick and lets me be more precise even when I'm using the higher speed. Tip number two is to slightly favor the forehand. In his experience, McSavid noticed that when players are coming in and deking, that they're able to move the puck much quicker to their forehand than they are to their backhand. So that way, if a player's coming down, it's better to challenge them slightly more on their forehand, since if they do go to make a move to their backhand, you have much more time to react to it than if they are to make a quick move to their forehand. Now, that's not to say that you should completely sell out on the forehand, because in higher levels of play, skaters are going to be able to read this, make a quick cut to their backhand, and expose you. So when it comes to challenging the shooter, you still want to stay square, but just keep in mind that any moves to their forehand will be much quicker than moves to their backhand. Tip number three is to read the speed of the skater. Not all situations are the same, so we can't have a one-size-fits-all approach to how we approach every single skater on a breakaway. Some skaters are going to come in with speed and just try to make one move to get around us, and then you're going to have some guys that take it wide, pretend they're Kuznetsov, and try to beat you with a bunch of dekes. If you know, you know. This is why we got to be aware of how much time we have so that we know how far we can challenge out and how quickly we need to retreat back to the net. And so another personal tip that I have for you guys is using the hash marks as a guide for when to make your move. I learned this tip from an old video from Crease Police, aka J Money, when he was going over tips that he used for breakaways. And so essentially how it works is when you see the player coming in, disregard all the fancy moves that they're trying to make to throw you off. What really matters is the move that they make as soon as they cross over that hash mark in front of them. Now, of course, like McSavid's last tip, it's definitely important to read the speed of the skater, but usually if a skater's coming in fast, they really only have time to make one more move before they get to the net. So at that point, you can read that final move and react. Now, before we keep going, McSavid's tips, I'm just going to sneak one of my own in there right quick, and that's to be aware of the positioning of your team. I'd say about 99 times out of 100, your teammates aren't just sitting in the offensive zone watching the guy come down on a breakaway. Usually they're trying to skate back, trying to knock the guy off the puck, or make sure that any rebounds don't get picked up by the other team. In situations like this, it's also really important to talk to your team to know what they want to do as far as covering the breakaway. Are they going to try to take the guy's forehand? That way they can leave the backhand, or vice versa. The next tip is to be aware of your angles. Now this one is twofold because it's important, of course, to be square and be on angle to the puck, but also to be mindful of your stance and what areas of the net you cover and which you leave open. For McSavid, especially when it comes to breakaways, he really likes his stance 49 because it gives him a much wider stance, which makes him appear bigger and makes it easier for him to make quick post-to-post movements. So next time that you're in the game, take a look both at your stance and what you're covering, and even look down at the other end of the ice and see what kind of stance the other goalie is using and see how that works for them. Tip number 5 is to boost that breakaway attribute. According to McSavid, having a high breakaway stat will help you get better animations when it comes to breakaways. He said that before he used to have his breakaway stat at 92, but since has even bumped it all the way up to 94 or even 95. One little caveat to this, however, is that the breakaway stat will only kick in on what the game decides is a clear-cut breakaway, which means you'll only see these stats come into effect on plays where the guy's coming in all alone over the blue line versus if he gets a fast break off a turnover in the defensive zone. And the last bonus tip I have for you guys is to use the flying poke check.
Hudson coming out! Oh! Gabrick! Right over top of Dom! Is he going to get a tripping penalty? What's he going to get?
Responsibly. Because just like any other desperation save, it's all about timing, knowing when and when not to use it. Just as you're reading the player and seeing what moves they might do, they're also reading you and anticipating if you're going to come out for that flying poke check. So some ways to spice it up are to either come out really, really early before they have a chance to start making moves, or even just come out very aggressively, giving the illusion that you're going to go for the flying poke check, which will definitely make them think twice about what their next move is. Overall, the key to having success with this is spontaneity. You never want them to know your next move, so definitely spice it up a little bit and always keep the shooter guessing. And the final tip that McSavid has for us is to practice, practice, practice. For me, my personal favorite is going into the team practice in club, getting a couple of my teammates, and just working on breakaways for a few minutes. And if I don't have any teammates on to practice breakaways with, my other mode that I love to go into is the 3v3 quick play mode. I think this mode's also helpful because this way you're going up against people whose tendencies you don't know, which will help put your skills to the test. And that's going to do it for our breakaway tips video. A huge thanks to McSavid for taking the time to share some of his tips with us. The main point here was to show you guys that you have a lot more control over breakaways than you think. If you guys have any more questions about breakaways or have your own tips for how to stop them, feel free to put them down in the comments. And lastly, the BTP March Madness pad design tournament is currently underway. If you want to check out some sweet setups, go follow us on Instagram. And if you want to come hang out and talk about everything goalie, feel free to join us in the Discord. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next video.